The Lakers will face Minnesota in the play-in round, while the Clippers apparently want to face off against each other. All eyes were on the USC defense for spring football scrimmage, and if the LA Galaxy clean house, what exactly constitutes a house cleaning? Good morning, I'm James. This is your daily dose of sports and snark for the greatest sports city in the world, Los Angeles. This is the faithful Angelenos Morning Report. It is April 10th, 2023. We added multiple new subscribers to the channel yesterday. Thank you. I appreciate every last one of you in the Angelino familia. And if you like the content we put out about LA sports, clickety-clack the like button. Clickety-clack the subscribe button. There's a notification bell. Hit that. It lets you know we drop new content. Sharing is caring. Let people know we exist. And by all means, comments. Keep me company. I am back in Portland, Oregon to work. It's not fun. So, before we go through the news and notes, a look at the scoreboard. Yesterday, LeBron James scored 36 points, and the Lakers clinched the 7th spot in the Western Conference, which means play-in tournament. They did so with a 128-117 victory over the Utah Jazz. The Lakers will host Minnesota in the play-in tournament on Tuesday. The winner of that game will face the Memphis Grizzlies in the first round of the playoffs. We'll talk a little bit more about that game in a minute. Meanwhile, Norman Powell led the Clippers with 29 points off the bench. The Clippers defeated Phoenix 119-114. That is going to be, oddly enough, the first round matchup for the Clippers. 4 versus 5 in the Western Conference, Suns versus Clippers. Arizona, well, they had fun at the Dodgers' expense over the weekend. Ended up the series with an 11-6 victory on Sunday. JD Martinez and Miguel Vargas each drove in 2 runs, but the Dodgers slipped out of first place. And let me tell you something that's a little bit alarming. The Dodgers haven't allowed double-digit runs to score against them in back-to-back games since 2017. That happened this weekend. And by the way, the last time it happened in 2017, that was also in Arizona. Meanwhile, today, the Dodgers fly up to San Francisco, 6:45 start. Julio Urias is 2-0 with a 1.5 ERA. Logan Webb, 0-2 with a 6.55 ERA. And Vancouver's facing the Kings. That game is at 7:30. Now, yesterday, I presumed that the Lakers were going to face New Orleans in that first play-in game. That changed, of course, because they're the Pelicans. How very Pelican. I mean, that's how the Lakers were able to steal Anthony Davis out of New Orleans in the first place. They're the Pelicans. Can't trust them. Oh, we have Zion Williamson. Big whoop. You're the Pelicans. You can't trust Zion Williamson to push himself away from the dinner table long enough to work out. They're the Pelicans. So Minnesota upset New Orleans yesterday, despite the Timberwolves' Rudy Gobert sucker punching his own teammate and another starter on the T-Wolves, Jaden McDaniels, breaking his hand by throwing a punch against the wall. The Pelicans couldn't take advantage of that. Craziness. So it's going to be Wolves versus Lakers. The loser of that game, we already mentioned the winner automatically goes to the playoffs. The loser of that game will face either Oklahoma City or New Orleans for the last playoff spot. It matters to win this game for the Lakers. You see, if you lose and you still wind up slipping in by winning the second play-in game, you face the Denver Nuggets. And Denver is a far more complete team than the Memphis Grizzlies. We talked about the Memphis Grizzlies in yesterday's clip. Now, regarding Tuesday night's game, we don't know yet if Rudy Gobert is going to play. After he sucker punched his teammate, they sent him home. But that doesn't mean he's going to be suspended. After all, the season's on the line. Gobert is necessary. He is their starting center. It's similar to how Anthony Davis doesn't like to play center. So the Lakers sometimes will try to add another big so Anthony Davis can play power forward. Well, Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota is the same way. McDaniels, by the way, won't be playing. He is the starting small forward. Now, assume for the moment that Gobert doesn't play. He's a starter. McDaniels is a starter. It sounds like it should be an easy Laker victory. Not so fast. Minnesota still has legit weapons in Towns, Anthony Edwards, and Mike Conley. So this could be a pretty good matchup because the Lakers have had the best record in the Western Conference since the trade deadline. They're 18-9. They've won 11 of their last 13. Now, having said that, Minnesota won the season series 2-1. There were rumors yesterday that the Lakers would make one roster move. They made two. One of them is a bit of an eye-opener. They signed LeBron James's former teammate over in Cleveland, Tristan Thompson. Thompson, by the way, you might remember him for basically flushing away his career and his masculinity by dating a Kardashian. Thompson didn't play at all this season. He hadn't played since 2022. He was big with the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron, but that was 5 full years ago. What does this guy possibly have left in the tank? As for the other moves, the Lakers waived Devon Reed and added guard Shaquille Harrison from the G League. Meanwhile, for the Clippers, I'm starting to wonder if Bones Hyland is a damn fool. Any Clipper fans want to answer that question for me? And I'm not trying to clown your team, right? But having said that, Bones Hyland appeared to be the instigator of a scuffle on the Clippers bench in Phoenix on Sunday. He said something to Mason Plumlee, the backup center. The center turns around, there's a shoving match. This was... The Clippers needed something else for the they need stability going into the playoffs because all year long is Kawhi Leonard playing? Is he not? Oh, what about Paul George? Now he's injured. We know he's not we know he's unlikely to be playing in the first round of the playoffs. They needed everybody on the same page. So what is this guy doing picking fights with his own teammates? You remember Bones Hyland, that he was acquired at the trade deadline from the Denver Nuggets. And the Nuggets were extremely happy to see this guy go. They traded him from out of Denver because he was such a pecker. This guy is not Chris Paul. He's averaging 10 points and only 3 assists a game. What are you doing? You're barely hanging on to your NBA job, dude. Try some decaffeinated coffee, something for Pete's sakes. The Trojans, they moved their spring practices to the Coliseum for a scrimmage on Saturday. Lincoln Riley spent much of his time continuing to talk up the defense. This has been something that's been a common theme throughout spring ball. Quote, totally different from a scheme knowledge standpoint, from a talent standpoint, especially in the front 7. Certainly a long way from where we were, unquote. Now, there are a couple of more practices before spring ball concludes. The transfer portal after those practices, by the way, will reopen. Transfer portal is back open on April 15th. Now, we talked about how Riley keeps talking up the defense. On defense, I can only give you little bits and pieces of what seems to be the foundation of what USC's got. The attention is to linemen Keon Bars and Anthony Lucas, both of them transfers from other schools. It definitely sounds like both of them are going to be the starters, that both of them are larger than any of the defensive linemen that USC had last year, and that included Tuli Tuipulotu, who was a stud for the Trojans. So apparently they are a little larger, they are a little more athletic. Linebacker is crowded. We don't know all the starters yet. Having said that, The Athletic is saying another transfer, Mason Cobb, is a surefire starter. He's the only surefire starter. Now, if you're a Trojans fan who watched the team last year, you're saying, wait a second, what about Shane Lee? What about Eric Gentry? Exactly. I'm not saying they suck, but what about them? Lincoln Riley is stressing competition across every position on defense. If you don't stand out in your competition, you might get benched, even if you started last year. And when you consider that the Trojans really face planted on defense in the Pac-12 title game against Utah and their Cotton Bowl loss to Tulane, I can't blame Riley for saying there's a lot of jobs open. As for defensive back, there's lots of names. And because there's lots of names, I cannot hazard a guess. I have no idea. Galaxy manager Greg Vanney opened his post-game presser after a humiliating 3-0 loss in Houston Saturday by saying, quote, "To our fans who show up and fight for us every single game, they won't see that again," unquote. And I don't hate Greg Vanney, but I have a question. How do you know we won't see that again? How do you know we won't see it as early as this Saturday against LAFC? Can anybody answer that for me? Take Douglas Costa, who was ejected for throwing an opponent down by the neck. Now, I'm not saying Costa is playing against LAFC, but Costa has only been with the Galaxy since the start of last season, and he has almost as many red cards as he has goals. 3 red cards in his Galaxy career, 4 goals. This guy was supposed to be an elite, all-world offensive force, and he rarely plays. The only way we know that he won't do it again is if they cut him outright. Now, we don't know if they are doing that. Speaking of cuts, the LA Times columnist Kevin Baxter is arguing that the Galaxy need to clean house in the front office. So I have a question for you as Galaxy fans, of which, of course, as you know, I am one. How many people would you get rid of? We all know about the Klein Out signs, and I am a proud member of #KleinOut movement. But Jovan Kirovski is the technical director. He is the main scout. He is perhaps the only scout. So all of those mistakes that were made in terms of adding or subtracting to the roster, you could argue that's his fault. Hell, what about Greg Vanney? What about him? Greg Vanney is clinging to a 4-3-3 alignment, and yet every time he decides to alter out of the 4-3-3, for example, a 3 defenseman, 5 midfield, 2 striker alignment, the Galaxy are creating chance after chance. And then the next week it's back to 4-3-3, and the offense looks like it's grounded in oatmeal, mud, quicksand, and cement. Nothing happens. So how much responsibility does Greg Vanney have? You could make that case. He's under 500. Right now, the Galaxy are arguably the worst team in MLS. So let me know, what constitutes a house cleaning that you would be satisfied with? It's April. MLS's regular season carries through late October. I bring this up because the hype train for Dennis Bouanga to be league MVP, that train done left the station. If you're an LAFC supporter who didn't like Bouanga last year, you got to run and catch up, pal, because this guy's been nothing but nails throughout the entire 2023. A long season. I'm not saying he's going to keep up this pace, but the man has 6 goals in 6 MLS matches. He has 11 goals across all competitions. Prior to this year, the man never recorded a hat trick in his career, and now he has 2 this year alone. Patience is a virtue, at least for Steve Cherundolo. The Odell Beckham Jr. rumors are finally over. The former Rams wide receiver who blew out his knee in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago has signed a contract with Baltimore. Our long nightmare of pointless rumors about where he's going to land is finally ended. He signed a 1-year contract for $18 million, by the way. There was no way the Rams could have even entertained, fantasized about matching that. And frankly, I don't blame him. If you recall last year, he wasn't their top, 2 years ago, when he was healthy, he still wasn't their top receiver. $18 million is top receiver money, which makes sense in Baltimore. They have no receivers. The LA Kings have signed forward Alex Laferriere to an entry-level contract. He's on the first line with the Kings AHL affiliate in Ontario. It is possible that he might get called up to some of the Kings' remaining games in the regular season and even possibly the playoffs. See, he can't play with Ontario during the playoffs. Rules down in the AHL have mandated that he cannot stay with the Ontario Reign when the playoffs begin. But you let me know what you think in the comments thread. Genuinely curious what your thoughts are about the LA Galaxy, about if you believe the hype about USC's defense being better this coming year, or for that matter, about the Lakers matchup against Minnesota tomorrow night. And if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to Faithful Angelenos. We're talking LA sports here every single day. Thank you for watching. I'm James. We'll be back tomorrow. Faithful Angelenos is a Kian Corte El Queso production. Take care.